off and listen closely to the fantastic presentation that we've got coming our way. I'm honoured to be here today to launch this fantastic project, Enhancing Modern Slavery Prevention within the homelessness sector in the UK. This is a report that addresses an urgent and often overlooked issue, the link between homelessness and modern slavery. This research was developed in close collaboration between my office, the UK Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner's Office, and the Passage. And I want to extend my deepest thanks to the Passage for their invaluable partnership. Most importantly, I want to thank the survivors who have so bravely and generously shared their experiences with us. Your voices are at the absolute heart of this work. I also want to extend my close thanks to Dr. Julia Thomas, the lead researcher and author in this work, for her dedication and her insight and her continued passion in this area. Too often, traffickers prey on those who are most vulnerable, and too often our systems fail to catch them in time. This report calls for structural change grounded in the lived experiences and the lived realities of survivors, and it offers clear and actionable recommendations to be taken forward. As the UK's Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner, my role is to promote best practice in preventing, identifying and responding to modern slavery and human trafficking. A central pillar of my strategic priority is prevention and early intervention, ensuring that we act before harm is done. This report represents a cornerstone of this mission, and I will continue to press the government and partners to respond to its findings with the urgency and commitment that this crisis demands. Importantly, the recommendations in this report were shaped with input from survivors, professionals, and further refined by a panel of experts, including representatives from devolved governments. This inclusive, multi-agency process ensures that the recommendations are survivor-led, UK-wide, and reflect the devolved nature of housing policy. It highlights the need for coordinated action across all 4 nations and across government departments. Together, we all have a responsibility to break the cycle of exploitation and to ensure that those at risk are seen, heard, and protected before harm is done. Thank you all so much for being here today. I am now going to hand over to the fantastic Mick Clark, the Chief Executive of the Passage, and I very much look forward to seeing and hearing more about this report. Thank you.
Many thanks, Eleanor, for that welcome and the overview. As Chief Executive of the Passage, I'm delighted to add my welcome to all of you this afternoon. It's a pleasure to share this report with you, which has been created in collaboration with the Office of the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner, and as Eleanor said, entitled Enhancing Modern Slavery Prevention within the Homelessness Sector in the UK. It may be helpful to give a very brief overview of the Passage. The Passage is based in Westminster and is all about ending homelessness. We do that in a number of ways. We have a number of prevention projects, preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place. For people who are experiencing homelessness, we have a raft of projects, day services, residential services, that help people off the streets into accommodation, employment, back into society. And we were the first homelessness organisation to identify the link between homelessness and modern slavery. And as most of us are aware, individuals experiencing homelessness are particularly vulnerable to exploitation. And tragically, those who have been exploited often find themselves without a safe place to call home. So this report highlights the critical role that the homelessness sector plays in identifying and supporting survivors, as well as leading prevention efforts to combat these intertwined issues. Our research emphasises the need for targeted interventions and collaborative efforts to protect those experiencing homelessness from exploitation. The findings underscore the importance of our work and examine other modern slavery prevention programmes within the homelessness sector across the UK. Some acknowledgements are important. Before we share the findings of the report, I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner and her team for commissioning this research project. None of this would have been possible without their trust and support. So Penny, Donna and Jason's contributions were instrumental in bringing this report to fruition and coordinating this event. I'm also immensely thankful to the individuals from the anti-slavery and homelessness sectors who participated in interviews, and also our recommendations panel. It was wonderful that it was truly national, with every devolved administration involved and represented, and they provided invaluable insights and feedback. I'd also, of course, like to acknowledge the team at the Passage. Special thanks to Jenny Travassos for her unwavering dedication, to Kate Hollyoak for her design expertise and advice, and of course to Dr. Julia Thomas, our lead researcher, who you will hear from in a moment. But finally, and most importantly, I'd like to thank the members of the Migrant Help's Lived Experience Advisory Panel and the Passage's Experts by Experience group, who dedicated their time to commit to this report and contribute to this report. Your voices shaped this research, and I extend my deepest gratitude for your courage in sharing your experiences and expertise to ensure that others are protected in the future. So maybe if we just turn to the schedule for this afternoon. So in a moment, Dr. Julia Thomas, the author of this report, will present the key insights from her research, revealing the significant findings and their implications. We'll also hear from one of our experts by experience group members, who will share their personal perspective in an interview with Julia. There will be some time for Q&A at the end, and as the event goes on, please do feel free to put any questions that you have that arise as things go along into the chat box. And then when we get to the Q&A, we will try and go through as many as possible. We obviously want to encourage open dialogue, but there's no expectations for you to share personal experiences. And of course, we ask that everybody respects the confidentiality of everything that is shared here and honour the diverse views and experiences of all participants. And so in closing, before handing over to Julia, I urge you all to read the report and share its findings within your communities. Raising awareness of these critical issues is the first step towards influencing change. It is crucial that we within the anti-slavery and homelessness sectors unite to collaborate and support ongoing efforts. We must ensure that the recommendations from this research reach those with the power to truly enact change. Cross-sector collaboration at local, regional and national levels is essential to prevent exploitation before it actually occurs. We owe this not only to those who work tirelessly to improve our systems, but most importantly to the victims and survivors and all those who've been impacted by this heinous crime in the future. So thank you once again for attending today and for all your contributions. And it's now my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Julia Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to attend this event. Instead, we thought instead of showing you a normal presentation for a presentation with methodology and insights and findings and recommendations, we're going to try something new. So I will just be speaking about methodology and key insights. I will also tell you what are we talking about here when we talk about prevention. And then we will have an interview with a participant with lived experience about some of the recommendations to which she really contributed. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what is prevention? Well, this report takes prevention from a public health approach, and this was based and developed by Elizabeth Such, sorry if she's attending and I'm not saying correctly the name, and her colleagues in various reports that were published by MSPEC in the past years. So instead of reinventing the wheel, I just picked it up and used it. So prevention, what is prevention? Prevention is preventing exploitation before it happens. It's intervening early to prevent further harm, it's treating harms, and it's preventing re-trafficking. It's really important to acknowledge that this report only talks about preventing modern slavery before it occurs, just the first bit, which is probably the most philosophical of them, I must say. Anyway, we choose two paths in here to see prevention of harm before it happens: universal prevention and targeted prevention. Universal prevention is tackling the root causes of exploitation. Well, to prevent modern slavery, what do we need? We need to prevent poverty. We need to prevent homelessness. We need to increase access to work, increase and enhance migration systems. And these all have to work together. A great example is West Midlands Combined Authority Homelessness Task Force. They put all of these elements together, all of these stakeholders, including the anti-slavery element, the West Midlands Anti-Slavery Network. And it's really interesting to see that the head of the work group on rough sleeping is actually a member of the Anti-Slavery Partnership. This is a great example to see how these two sectors can work together in universal prevention. It's really a work for local authorities, combined authorities, and central government. On the other side, we have targeted prevention, which focuses on the groups at most at risk. And this can be delivered by local authorities, but by the third sector above all. We provide examples. One is the Westminster City Council, actually Triborough Anti-Slavery Group, that worked on data. They've been collecting data since 2018 at least, and this allowed them to acknowledge the predominant countries of origin in our boroughs for victims of modern slavery, and that fed into a prevention project to raise awareness of modern slavery within those communities. We have also another example that we share from SOTIS, and they have a reach out project. So they go to places where people experiencing homelessness are, such as day centers, night shelters, asylum hostels, and they raise awareness of modern slavery. So they help preventing modern slavery before it happens. But that has another positive outcome, is that people are recognizing they might be victims of modern slavery. So they are coming forward. And as a result, identifications are also increasing. Next slide, please. So a little bit of the methodology. I don't want to linger on the classic methods: literature reviews, semi-structured interviews, and focus groups with people with lived experience of modern slavery and homelessness. What I would like to highlight here, and I think is quite interesting for the report, is the analytical framework that we created to study these projects. This analytic framework has various elements, and that is shared in the report and also in the annex. And it will almost could work as a checklist before you create a prevention project. Does it tackle prevention before it happens? Who is funding it? Is it creating with partnerships? Is it leading to partnerships? Does it provide peer support? Is it created with survivors' voices? And that is a second use that you can do with the report, is to use this framework to create prevention projects. We then have the recommendations. Eleanor and Mick have been talking about that, and that was an incredible experience. Every participant will ask the same question at the end, and focus groups as well. So what would you like to tell to policy makers? What change do you want to see? And we at the end had around 28 recommendations, or 30, that me and Jenny went through it and we cleaned it. We didn't delete them, but many recommendations say the same thing with different words. So we managed to put it into 8 or 9 recommendations that we brought to this panel of recommendations of policymakers, and I'm grateful for you guys who attended it. And so we discussed one by one the recommendations. We discussed if it was actionable, if it was realistic, and who could do this, who could deliver this. And so I think these are the two highlights of the methodology. And next slides, please. Now, what were the key insights? These key insights come from survivors, practitioners from the 4 nations. We interviewed not only the devolved administrations, modern slavery teams, but also charities from the 4 nations. And according to participants, education is crucial. We have to integrate education on exploitation since an early age, from an early age, apologies. This work should target children and help them recognize what are the signs of exploitation, what are our personal boundaries, when to say no, when to trust or not someone. We have to tell them about online safety and also how to seek help. Where can they go to seek help? Then we had most of the survivors, if not 100% of the survivors, told us they would like to be more involved, but more involved not only in policy development, as we are doing, and in research, but also in projects, in outreach projects. Survivors told me they would like to come with a Passage outreach team and speak with people sleeping rough and tell them about the dangers of modern slavery and how exploiters are preying on the streets and on train stations and bus stations. Also, many survivors told us they were vulnerable to exploitation when they were sleeping rough. And to quote one, she said, "I was living with a friend, but that friend asked me to move out. So I found myself not having anywhere to go. And that's why I ended up being exploited." We then have knowledge gaps, housing authorities, and data. We have to strengthen the data on homelessness and modern slavery. We should update the NRM referral form to include housing status, at least at the point of identification. This would ensure that we are acknowledging the link between modern slavery and homelessness. This will also show us how experiencing homelessness for a survivor is incredibly strong and terrible. It affects the physical and mental health and actually increases vulnerability to re-exploitation. We should enhance training for housing authorities. We should have, the modern slavery unit should deliver training. The government page on training should be updated. The contacts that are there are outdated, even though little information is wrong. Then we come across siloed departments. We all know that. More multi-agency working, not only between departments within central government, but with devolved administrations, with all the sectors. And we are always talking about that, but we're still not quite there. And to help this, we should appoint modern slavery coordinators within local authorities. They are the ones who are bridging all of these sectors together. We should include representatives of the anti-slavery sector in homelessness task forces. The homelessness sector should be part of the development of any government action or strategies on modern slavery. And this could be done with collaborative workshops, as easy as that. Limited visibility. Well, I went back in my memory and I collected since 2014 all the projects that I knew. And of course, we did more research. Where are they? They are invisible. I just know about these projects because I've been working for so long on modern slavery and homelessness. Otherwise, they would have passed unacknowledged. And that's why we should make these projects far more visible and praise them. And also, most of the projects, they were reactive and not proactive. It's very hard to tackle modern slavery before it happens because we have to imagine. We have to go there before traffickers. This is incredibly important to raise awareness for education. We have to reach out to the vulnerable populations. And finally, strengthening legislative protection for survivors who are homeless. The Homelessness Prevention Bill should explicitly recognize survivors in modern slavery as a priority group. This would ensure that local authorities would have a statutory duty to provide secure housing. We also suggest that an amendment to the Crime and Policing Bill, which should reflect the intersection between homelessness and criminal exploitation. So lots and lots of work we have to do in front of us, right? And so let's get together and do it. I would like now to invite our guest. I'm going to turn off my camera for a while just to adapt. Okay, don't go away. Just turning around. And let us see if that is okay. Perfect. Okay. Hello, Mila.
Hello, Julia.
Welcome.
That's a great presentation.
Thank
I
you.
was like impressed with it.
Thank you very much.
Everyone, my name is Mila. I'm a victim of modern slavery and I am homeless as well. I'm still experiencing homelessness. I'm a client of Passage, so I'm also expert by experience. So when we say expert by experience, that means that I use my homelessness and modern slavery experience to advise local and national authorities when they create their homelessness strategies. So I do work with a variety of authorities, obviously Westminster City Council, Mayor of London. I do advise the Ministry of Housing when they create their strategies. And I obviously work with charities like Passage or Marylebone Project where I stay at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Mila, and welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Could we go to the next slide, please? And we've been speaking lately this last month, and thank you again, about these recommendations, and we came across a couple of recommendations that are most important to Mila. So I'll go on reading. One is embedding homelessness in modern slavery strategy development. As I said before, the homelessness sector should be included in the development of action plans and modern slavery strategies. We should organize collaborative workshops between the Home Office Modern Slavery Unit, Ministry of Housing, and the third sector. And the same can be said, right, to embed the anti-slavery, the modern slavery element into homelessness strategies. Now, you just said that you've been working in co-production with these rough sleeping strategies.
Yeah.
What was your experience?
You had a great point, Julia. We definitely should include modern slavery within the homelessness because they go hand in hand together. Unfortunately, through my experience, I think I am in 9 different co-productions at the moment, as I said before, with different authorities. My challenge has been that when we try to, so co-productions are where the authority and the homelessness group comes together and they work to create the strategy. So you can talk about domestic abuse, you can talk about everything, but once I start to talk about modern slavery, I just realized everyone just gets quiet. Initially, I thought it was just because they don't know what to say. Recently, I start to realize that the emotion of feeling sorry for me is just so strong that they completely forget why we are there. It doesn't happen with the domestic abuse, unfortunately. They're very keen to talk, to discuss it, but with the modern slavery, either because they don't know about it or they just feel really emotional for my situation. We can't get anywhere. So I start to not talk about it. Unfortunately, I'm very sorry to say that, but just because once I start to talk about it, everything stops and people feel, oh, Mila, I'm so sorry to hear about that. And we just stop the strategy most of the time. So everything becomes about me being okay. And I'm like, I'm all right. Can we just actually discuss and work on that and include that in the homelessness strategy? So that's my biggest problem.
Did you manage to include elements of modern slavery in rough sleeping strategies?
No, I haven't. I did manage to include a lot of things about women's hidden homelessness, about domestic abuse, about the challenges of trans women like me, LGBTQ. And imagine normal LGBTQ is the most difficult element to include in the homelessness strategy. I managed to do that, but I couldn't manage the modern slavery, unfortunately. It's the civil servants. So when you're in a co-production, you have groups, you have policymakers who sit there with us, and it's generally them. I just think it's not something that they know very well about, so they're not prepared to discuss it, or they're just very surprised in the fact that I am the victim and I am bringing that.
And you are speaking about it.
And I always struggle. That's why I was very excited to be the part of this research. And I'm very keen to do anything about professionals who work on modern slavery, so I can learn as well, because I managed, as I said, to bring more difficult topics in the strategy, but unfortunately modern slavery is the one that I really struggle.
That is really, really insightful on this recommendation. Could you take us to the next recommendation, please, Kate? Thank you. This gets exactly into training what people know or not about modern slavery, right? And this is why we suggest to enhance modern slavery training for housing authorities. Now, you went to housing authorities.
Yes.
You know those authorities pretty well. I would like to ask you if that's okay with you to tell us, to share with us, what was your experience when you first went to housing authorities to help?
Yeah, mine was a very bad example. I'm quite sure there's a better examples there, but you already know what that my modern slavery element of my homelessness was completely ignored for 12 days, I believe, and then NRM decision was made, referral was made. So the first day, as soon as I escaped, the person who helped me take me to his home, but then he needed to move to his brother's home. So he brought me to the homelessness assessment team. As you should probably guess, I do work a lot with Westminster Council, so Westminster Council was my assessment team, homelessness assessment team. And although my whole story was about modern slavery, I was telling them, oh, there's a perpetrator out there, my ex-boyfriend is forcing me to have sex with random men that he brings, and he takes money from them. I had been isolated for 3.5, 4 years, and I just escaped him. He's looking for me. Even there is a written document that I write actually that, and they asked me to sign. That happened on the very first day. Like, they just at the end told me that they do not have a duty of care for me because I am pre-settled. So my immigration status was more important for them than the actual event. So
where do they tell you? What did they suggest you to do?
So they suggested me to go to Victoria train station because I think it was October, November, so it was quite cold. So I went to the train station. I ended up rough sleeping for 3 days. And the second day of the rough sleeping, actually my perpetrators, my ex-boyfriend was my perpetrators. His best friend saw me in the train station, obviously such a central train station. And he just told me that he's gonna kill me if he finds me, but if I return, he won't do anything. He won't touch me. But if I don't return, he will kill me and he will harm my mom, where he knows the location. The first night of the rough sleeping, again in Victoria train station, 2 men came to me. First one man came to me. He said he was homeless and that he could help me, to tell me where to go, that the Victoria train station was getting closed in the midnight, so I needed to go somewhere else. But then he just told me that he actually is not homeless in Victoria because he doesn't have a house in Victoria, but he actually has a house in Hackney, I believe he said. So I said, that doesn't mean you are homeless. But anyway, I realized it's like he's playing with me. And then suddenly second man appeared. And once they realized I'm not going to come with them, I'm not going to take their help, they start talking about actually, oh, you can make a lot of money, you are beautiful, you know, like you can live a luxurious life if you come with us. I just said no. I just escaped one. But I just assume there's a lot of women there who wouldn't know that they are actually traffickers. I immediately know they're looking for a
Exactly.
woman.
So you kind of covered in here three main themes. Being having to sleep rough for 3 nights to be verified, it's absolutely is highly risky. For you were particularly vulnerable to re-exploitation. You're also vulnerable, well, thanks to your experience, you didn't accept the help, let's say, from these men, but actually the housing authorities obliging, making people sleeping rough in train stations is putting them at risk of exploitation. So surely this is something we can tackle and do better and stop verifying rough sleepers in this way, that's for sure. That's a third theme. There is a third theme that was very important, is very important for us too, is priority need.
Yeah.
Survivors of modern slavery are not priority need, and you know that.
Yeah.
You absolutely know. Why do you think they should be considered?
They should definitely be priority need, because there's a difference when you are a rough sleeping woman and when you are a rough sleeping woman who is a victim of modern slavery, because there's an active perpetrator there looking for you. I think this is the missing element of the housing assessment teams that they're missing. They just see you, okay, a rough sleeping woman as others. No, sorry, but there's a massive difference there. You have a perpetrator looking for you. You are a valuable asset for them, and suddenly this asset who can bring them thousands of pounds, he's disappeared. Do you think they will just leave us? No. And my solicitor challenged Westminster Council to their defense. They just said that 2 or 3 days rough sleeping for me wouldn't make a massive difference in terms of the general outcome. And they already knew what happened in that 3 days. So first of all, a friend of my perpetrators saw me. So instead of coming to me and talking to me, trying to convince me, he could actually call my perpetrator without coming to me, wait there, tell him where I am. That's it. You don't even need 3 days of rough sleeping. 1 moment is enough. Then I had 2 men trying to take me, probably to re-traffic me again. So in 3 days, I had a lot of things, and I was just lucky that nothing happened. But for the housing assessment team's defense, 2 or 3 days of rough sleeping, they put that in a written letter, which I just received last week, wouldn't make a massive difference in terms of the outcome. This is unacceptable. And just listening to your presentation, I didn't know that in NRM referral form, you don't have that information that we are homeless. I can tell you now, I'm like very confident that many victims of modern slavery are already homeless. Even if they have a place to live, because they're escaping something, they're hiding, they probably already need to leave what they have. In my case, it wasn't the case because I was isolated for 3.5 years. But I'm quite sure even if I had my own place and he was keeping me there in my own place, I would run away. So I would be still homeless. So I can't think when you are escaping, running away, how you're not homeless. So most of the time you will be.
You are, exactly. Well, I think we are arriving to our time. Thank you, Mila,
No worry.
for your insights.
Excellent.
Everybody, we were going to get into Q&A, and over to you, Mick.
Thank you so much, Julia and Mila. Incredibly powerful. Just a couple of things in the chat. I think it was Nicola that asked about the slides. We will share the slides with everybody that Julia took through, and there will be a link, QR code, etc. at the end of today in the closing remarks that will give you a link to the whole report, and we will share that with everybody as well. So everyone will have an opportunity for that. Thank you so much to people who've been asking different questions in terms of the presentations that we've had so far. Let's start with one which I think is best directed to Julia. Sorry, Julia, this is putting you on the spot. But how can services support individuals who decline or withdraw from the NRM, from the National Referral Mechanism?
How can we support survivors who have left the NRM? Well, we should definitely have a better support pathways to support those who are not in the NRM. It's not because they are not in the NRM that they are not survivors, and we should take that pretty much in consideration. Priority need based on what survivors are telling you should be based on what the survivor is telling you, and not on a letter from the Home Office to say if the person is in the NRM or not. We are with incredible colleagues, we are creating a forum for non-NRMs, and I will it's a future, we are working in it in the future, and you will hear from us about that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julia. There's also a hand up from, I think it's Natalia. Natalia, are you able to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, hello. Thank you, everybody. So in Kent, I'm really proud that we are very shortly going to be moving forward with a joint strategic approach to addressing homelessness and modern slavery. It's going to include a lot of the points you guys have spoken about, training and being able to identify people who have experienced abuse, etc. One of the things we're really keen on is making sure that there are people with lived experience who contribute to this strategy, because we want to make sure that we are, doing all the things that have been spoken about today. What's the best way for us to engage people who have lived experience of modern slavery? Because it's something actually in all parts of homelessness that in Kent in particular, we've really struggled with, to actually get people involved in that process of co-production. But it's something that we're really keen to do. Any tips?
Again, Julia Mila, I think would be invaluable really in terms of your experience.
I think.
How did we convince you to work?
Well, I think because I was a client of Passage, it was, and I think we probably wouldn't have a problem finding people. We are so keen to talk, because probably it's again one of the areas where no one listens to us. So I think if you go to the charities or authorities which work with victims of modern slavery, they will be keen to talk. Another one that I can think is at Leo. They have their own co-production. They use an input from their clients as well.
Yes, I would also add, talking exactly, there are some organizations that have already their LEAP group. So Human Trafficking Foundation has a group of experts by experience, with lived experience, something around these terms. I know, so West Midlands Anti-Slavery Network is also it's also creating one and has one. Migrant Health, as we've been working with us as well. So there's several organizations that have already these groups in place and all the safeguarding policies around and how to work with them in a trauma-informed way. So rather than reinventing the wheel, I would get in touch with these organizations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, there's a question I think from Sharon, which is probably best to you, Eleanor. Is there any data on gender breakdown of victims of modern slavery and other demographics on victims?
Thank you, Mick. So there is nationwide data from those victims that have been referred into the National Referral Mechanism. So as we've discussed, they are the victims that have been identified by first responder organisations. So they're likely to just represent, sadly, the tip of the iceberg in terms of some of those people that need help and support. But that data from the Home Office does show that the majority of victims are male, around 25% are female. That number, though, across the board is growing each year. So it's more and more women, sadly, being exploited, and more men who are being exploited. And we also know the nationalities of the kind of top victims who were referred into the National Referral Mechanism. In the most recent data for the last 2 years, actually, it's been UK nationals which have been the most predominant group of nationals that have been referred into that support framework. So there is breakdown of that data. I should say, depending on the form of exploitation that you're looking at. So for instance, with criminal exploitation, it's predominantly UK male boys that we see being exploited. For labour exploitation, it's predominantly adult men that we see in those numbers. And for commercial sexual exploitation, it's predominantly women. So depending on the form of exploitation that's being identified, you can see different gender demographic breakdowns. That being said, though, as I mentioned, first responder organisations and professionals are sometimes looking for particular things, and therefore you see those groups being identified more than actually would represent a full nationwide picture. So it shows part of the picture, the data, but it would always be useful to have more data, more survivor input for us to be able to really understand the issues going on.
Thanks ever so much, Eleanor. And great to see so many questions going in. And Natalia, I know that just in case you missed it in the chat, there's been some very positive responses and helpful links for you. So just to make sure that you're aware of that. Not sure who this one is for, but the question is, there remains a divide between those individuals and organisations who completely understand and can identify slavery and trafficking, and those individuals and organisations who do have no concept or understanding of the issue. What more can be done to close the gap? Maybe Julia and Eleanor really would be good. Do you want to go first, Julia? Okay. After you, Charles.
Eleanor, after you.
So I don't know if I'm going to end up saying the same thing as Julia, but I think the most important thing in this area to begin with is training. Is the most core, basic, fundamental thing that I think is needed across all first responder organisations, particularly statutory ones that have a role to play in identifying victims of modern slavery. If you look at the moment at organisations that refer victims into the national referral mechanism, if you are referred by a fantastic organisation like the Passage, actually they fill in the forms really well, they take the time to speak to survivors, they really understand the issues, and your chance of being positively identified by the Home Office as a victim of modern slavery are quite high, around 68% upwards. If you are referred in by a Home Office organisation like Border Force or the Immigration Enforcement Competent Authority, they've all got very long, complicated names. Often the forms are done in a rushed, shorthand way, and actually your chances of having a positive outcome are quite low. I think that needs to change. That's unacceptable. Every victim who's identified should have the same chance of accessing the care and support they need. I think that's critical, and I think the way that that needs to happen is training across the board. It's something I continuously push the Home Office on. I think it's very easy to do, and I don't understand why it's not happening. I will try and put a more positive spin on it, Mick, but I'm struggling to work out what the positive spin is on it. So, Julia, do you have one?
I don't know if I have really positive. Emil would like to say something.
I have something to say. So, on their defense, the Westminster City Council homelessness assessment team, that although they do have a statutory responsibility, there is not a definition of what should the timing be. So they say they could wait. In my case, I think they waited for 12 days to refer me to Passage. They said it is acceptable for them. I think there should be a clearer criteria, particularly for the timing, when we think about the risks involved, when there's a perpetrator actively looking, for them to say, 1, 2 weeks or maybe a month is acceptable, because they said we try to understand if it's real, we take our time, so there is not a time limit for us to make the referral. which I think is a massive issue and could be fixed very quickly to say, you know, like as soon as or 2 days, 1 day.
So this highlights really, yes, the communication. I think this comes with the training that should be mandatory, which part of it should be trauma informed. You can't just say people will get back to you soon. That's not a trauma-informed way. And yes, this training, some things are really, when you go to the website of the government and you see the training that is there offered, I mean, it's 30 minutes of a webinar online. How do you expect to train first responders in 30 minutes? Not even in a full day, I managed to do it. So I think there is, and as Eleanor said, is really, this is, the cost would be pretty low to do this in a very good way. And then that could include, really, if we work with survivors and have this input, we know that we have to create clear support pathways for first responders with timings, and when do we say what to who and what do we do. I think that would help a little bit.
Yeah, particularly I believe if the victim is in a risk of rough sleeping, there should be a specific, you know, rule to say we cannot risk this. It's very easy. I think rough sleeping for a victim, particularly at the first days of when they escape. I mean, as Eleanor said, there's different types of modern slavery, but particularly with human trafficking, sex trafficking, because they see you as a very valuable asset, they really actively look for. So I think that should be different rules.
A good start.
Elvie, thank you for that. There's a question from Nicola Bell, very interesting one. Thank you for the important work reflected in this report. Totally agree with raising awareness. But in my experience, I've observed that some organisations can hold stigmatising views, particularly towards British nationals or people who use drugs, seeing them as less potential victims and more as individuals with challenging behaviour, or even just making unwise choices. This can lead to missed opportunities for identifying and supporting those at risk of exploitation. What can be done to challenge these perceptions whilst raising awareness within services and improve the early identification and prevention of modern slavery among these overlooked groups? Is that one for you, Julia?
Yes, it's for all of us. What can be done? Reform the NRM process. The NRM is inhumane. It's a leap of faith, and I'm using words that have been used by survivors. The support system we have in place isn't fit for purpose for people without immigration status, but even more so for UK nationals. And that is incredible because ultimately is a breach of VCAT. We should support every survivor regardless of their nationality. And it's really unclear on what is the support available for UK nationals. Can they go to safe houses or not? It's a very grey area there. And why not? Why could English survivors not be able to enter safe houses if that is what they need? So we need clear clarification and transparency when we are amending the homelessness reduction strategy, but also the modern slavery statutory guidance.
Can I comment on that as well?
Please do.
When Salvation Army called me, when they realized I have a pre-settled status, the woman's first response was, "Why are you calling us then? You can apply to universal credit." I said, "I already applied to universal credit. I'm not calling you because I need a benefit. I'm calling you because I'm a victim of modern slavery." But she was like, "You can spend your time trying to get help from your counsel." And I said, "No, I'm calling you because I need a mental health support." And just to, I think it's a great question. One of the main reasons why I become part of this co-production is to become a voice for homeless women, rough sleeping. But the second is to challenge the stereotype and conception of what victim of modern slavery is. I was a director for HSBC before I became victim of modern slavery. I have a degree in engineering and 2 masters in economics and finance. I have an MBA. I studied in Australia in one of the top universities. So it's not like when people say, "Oh, she's probably from India or something from an unknown university." No, I worked in very big companies, very educated. I was making 6-digit salaries a year. And because of my ex-partner, I still did become a victim of modern slavery. And now through these co-productions, I realized there's lawyers, there's doctors, but people just stereotype things where they say, oh, they're probably a girl from a village from Bulgaria or Romania who they just took and bring here. It's not like that.
Thank you so much for raising that question and for the brilliant answers. And it touches very much on the stereotypes of the so-called deserving and undeserving. And it's great to bust those stereotypes. Eleanor, do we want to go near reform of the NRM or even, dare I say, abolishment of it?
Sorry, I was just thinking, I was so struck by what you just said, and I think that's really important about busting the stereotypes. And I don't know if we want to go near the NRM in too much detail after that, because actually I think that was a really important message for everyone on the call to take away. I think I would just say, in my role as anti-slavery commissioner at a UK-wide level, I push for that kind of change in rhetoric. We're talking about a change in the system and improving our understanding, because it should, I think, be a really clear case that policymakers in government, the ones that I work with, really understand this issue and understand what they're trying to do to change it. And I think at the moment, sadly, that's not where we would all want it to be on this call, but it absolutely does need to change so that people get the support they need.
Thanks, Eleanor. And it's great to see again in the chat that some of the questions have been answered. We're doing everything we can to get through all the questions. We've probably got time for 2 more. Is there a toolkit which homelessness providers can use to self-assess their services to ensure they are accessible to survivors and prevent modern slavery for current or existing people they support? I know, Julia, we have a toolkit which is there to be nicked by everybody, but
we do have a toolkit, but is on support, is on the early intervention after harm occurs. And this is actually one of our recommendations in this report, is to create a national framework or guidance on prevention. What does that mean with a really like a checklist, for instance, of this analysis framework? But it would be this framework, this guidance would not be statutory. We did reflect on this at our recommendations panel. Who would deliver it? How can it be done? We want all the administrations to be involved. We want survivor voices as well to be involved. So this framework is in the recommendations, this guidance. It should come along. So if there are funders in this call, do get in touch.
Great. And just a couple of ones. Is housing stated included in duty to notify in England? The duty to notify clause is not operating in Scotland yet, but it would be good to know if there is recommended good practice which could be adopted when it does. Does anybody want to take that one?
I'm happy to do it. No, there is no housing entries at all in any part of the NRM. Duty to notify is a segment of the NRM form as it is. And no, there is absolutely nothing on housing. So guys from the vault administrations, if you're updating the NRM, please do it. But I'm just seeing Anne-Marie on call. But the modern slavery victim care contract, that includes housing status. I've been speaking with subcontractors and the contract main holder, and that data exists. So it's just how to get it and what to do with it. But in the NRM referral per se, no. And I would like to highlight as well that housing applications do not have a box for modern slavery, just domestic violence. So it's something that both sectors could do.
And Anne-Marie very helpfully put something in the chat, so please do have a look at that. So I think final question. Have any county-wide local authorities come together already to 100% ensure that in the 5 days or so whilst waiting for an NRM-RG decision and thereafter accessing support, that emergency safe accommodation is provided for those referred into the NRM that are homeless? Again, Ellie, Julia, any thoughts?
Okay, shall I go again? So I would say this is very, in our experience at the Passage and with my research, which is not within this research, is actually the next one you'll hear about person, but there is, it's kind of, it should, on paper, if a person is destitute, the main contract holder will offer provision, safe housing provision before positive RG. That is on paper. In reality, it's not always the case. And here comes we need a clear definition of what is homeless, what is destitution. Because it's not because you're entitled to housing and you have a housing application done that you're not destitute. You can be in the streets while you're doing that. So this really brings the need for clear definitions for all of these terms, and the definitions to be the same within all departments of central government.
That's great. Thank you, Julia. I'm conscious that we have about 2 minutes, so I just want to wrap up really with some closing remarks. Firstly, thank you to everybody who has presented and everybody that I thanked at the start. I'm not going to thank them all again, other than a real particular thank you to Mila. So powerful to hear you share your experience, and the Passage is so blessed to have your input, and I think everybody else on this call has been blessed too. So thank you. I think also this shows how much more needs to be done. This report is a start, but we certainly, working with the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner's Office, will be monitoring the progress on these recommendations. We don't want this to be sat getting dusty on some shelf somewhere. We want these to be real recommendations that lead to real actions. So we will be monitoring progress and hopefully keeping people updated on that. I was very struck with Mila around the verification point. We've got to move away from people having to go to the streets to get help. The Passage have been banging on about this for years, and we're beginning to see a move away from that now, and so hopefully that can be delivered. It just shows the vulnerability when you are on the streets. And again, Mila, just describing and challenging the stereotypes that are out there. But the more that we collaborate and work together, more that we can achieve. And it's, again, just been so fantastic to work with so many great people on the coordination of this report. Thank you, Julia, for all the work that you did. Thank you, everybody. And Kate, is there the QR code and the slide and the link that sends everything? I know you'll put the link in the chat as well. So please do feel free to scan the code. The link is in the chat as well. And thank you very much for all the applause and the hands up and the thumbs up, none of which is directed at me. So thank you, everybody. And amazingly, it's 1:30. So thank you again. And I hope you have a brilliant rest of the day. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.